Welcome back everybody. In this video we are going to working with a sprite in our game Flappy Bird colon. So in this video we are going to see how we can add our own sprite to our Flappy Bird game, and we'll do little bit of basic animation as well to make our bird flop up and down. Alright, so to be able to add our sprite we are going to need some images for them. So you can download those from link in the description below. Zip file that download and then just unzip that zip file and you will have a little folder with a very simple. We have got a background, we have got a bird in two state. So you might just be able to see there got wings up and then wings down, and then we have got two tubes. So this is a tube coming from bottom and coming down from the top. That's all we need. And of course we are going to need to add those to our app. The way I'll do it is to go over Android Studio and open the Android and asset folder. So you can see that where we have got a bad logic JPEG file, the default, and then I'm just rebel that in the Finder. You can open it in the Windows Explorer instead and then just select those images and drag them into the asset folder, or just copy those files and simply paste into the asset folder. Like that. Here we go. Now you can see that already here, and I'm actually going to get delete of bad logic JPEG because we don't need that anymore, and then read more MD as well. Alright, just before we add our first sprite, there's one change we want to make, and that is we noticed that last time the app is landscape mode by default. Now that's great for most games, but Flappy Bird is actually one of the few games that you can play in portrait mode, or that's how we are going to make it anyway. So if you go into Android manifest and then Android manifest.xml, you can see we have got a usual stuff that we are used to, and then a bit of other stuff as well. The key things that we want to change here is the screen orientation. So Android screen orientation landscape to Android screen orientation portrait. Okay, so now we are in a position to add our code. So pretty much everything we do is going to be in this single Flappy Bird class, and I'm just going to get delete of everything that here, and here as well, and we are starting from scratch. So as I mentioned in the previous video, we have got two main method here. The create method, which happens obviously when the app is run, and the render method that happens continuously as the app is processed. So our main here is to add a couple of sprites. We are going to start with the background, and then we are going to bring in our Flappy Bird, and we add our sprite as a badge. So sprite badge is exactly what you might think. A sprite is essentially an image or a character or a background, something like that, and we create a sprite badge to manage displaying and animation of those sprites. So the first thing that we are going to do to add our background is to begin our badge. So this just tells the render method that we are going to start displaying sprite now, and we are only going to display the one, but we are going to display the background. So instead of having texture called image, let's have a texture called background, and our texture is just an image. It is exactly the same things, but in games creation they are known as texture rather than images. And then we are going to define which image this background is going to be. So we want background equal new texture double quote, and of course we are going to use background PNG. So now this background refers to this texture and then to display it, we take our badge and then we draw, and you can see we have got a bunch of options there of way that we can draw things. And then main ones that we're going to be using is like this first one. So we give the texture first, then the x coordinate and y coordinate, then the width. And that one, if you could see, it will say height. We give the x coordinate, y coordinate, the width, and then the height. So start with the texture background, then the x coordinate. I want this background to be a full screen, so I want it to begin at the bottom left, so 0 0. Then I want the width to the same as the width of screen, and I can get that from the GDX library using gdx.graphics.getWidth. Here we go. Next, we want the height of these things to be the same as the height of the screen, which is gdx.graphics.getHeight. And then that's all we are having this time. So then we use batch.int. So we have now created our render method, and we have told it to repeatedly display the background on our phone screen, and we are stitching it so that it is going to be whole screen, because the bottom left of our image is going to be at the bottom left of the screen, the width is going to be the width of the screen, and the height is going to be the height of the screen. So let's just take a look. There we go. There's our lovely background stitch of full screen. Now let's bring our board in. So as you can imagine, we create a new texture, which I call a texture Flappy Bird up, and then we'll set board to be equal to a new texture Flappy Bird up.png. Okay, so probably a lot of started with something like bash, draw, and then Flappy Bird up, which is a good start. And then you are thinking, why? What do we want to the x coordinate to be? Well, if we want the board to be in the center of the screen, we want the x coordinate to be the center of the screen. Now we know that the screen width is that gdx.graphics.getWidth. So if we divide that by 2, that will give us the center of the screen. So let's try that out. So the gdx.graphic.getWidth divide by 2, and then similar with the height, gdx.graphics.getHeight divide by 2. And then you may have noticed that if we don't need to specify the width and height, then of the actual asset of texture, we don't need to. So why not just let the size be whatever the size of the sprite is, because I didn't specify that I wanted it a certain size. So that will be a very reasonable solution. So if you run app, that you will have seen board in the your app screen. Wonderful. And then you might have thought, wait a minute, that does not look quite center, and that's because it is not quite central, and that because what you give when you give this coordinate is you give this coordinate of bottom left of the sprite. So that's this bit here, because it is a square, so it is around there, and that point there is exactly the center of the screen. But of course what we exactly want is the center of the sprite to be in the center of the screen. What we are going to need to do is move the sprite half it is width to the left, and then half it is width to the down, and then center of the sprite will be in the center of the screen, which is what we want. So we need to get the width of the sprite or the width of the Flappy Bird up, which we can do using Flappy Bird up.getWidth. So exactly the same as graphic.getWidth, but obviously on Flappy Bird up this time. And we want to subtract Flappy Bird up.getWidth half the width of the Flappy Bird up, so that the center of the Flappy Bird up will be in the center of the screen, and exactly the same for the height. Subtract Flappy Bird up.getHeight, but we want subtract half of this height of the Flappy Bird up this time, not half of the width. So well done if you figure out that. There is going to be a lot of math in our Flappy Bird. Game development is quite math heavy, and you are going to need to do quite a lot of thinking and working out formulas to get everything to appear in the right place. And there you go. That board now looks much more central than it did before. So we have got our board, we got our background. Our only other aim for this video is get the board floppy. So remember, this looks static, but this render method is exactly begin run again and again and again. So all we need to do is to, instead of drawing board each time, we need to draw Flappy Bird up, and then we need to drop Flappy Bird down the next time, and then Flappy Bird up, and then Flappy Bird down, etc. We need to go back and forth between Flappy Bird up and Flappy Bird down. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an array of texture, and I'm going to call it birds, and then we are going to have a birds. This time, instead of begin new texture, it is going to be a new array of texture which we create using texture and then square bracket. And we need to specify the number of items in our array. So birds equal new texture array. We have two birds and there's going to be two. It is going to be Flappy Bird up and Flappy Bird down. Then we just specify each of them. So birds 0 is going to be birds 0 equal new texture Flappy Bird up.png. So same as what we have before. And then birds 1 is going to be birds 1 equal new texture Flappy Bird down.png. So now instead of displaying just bird every time, we are going to be displaying birds 0 and then birds 1 and then birds 0, etc. Now of course, to manage that, we are going to have to keep track of which one we want to display at any given time. So I'm going to sprite those up a little bit, that there's all the board information is kept together. And the way I'm going to deal with that is have an integer, which is I'm going to call floppy state. That's initialize going to be 0, int floppy state equals 0. So floppy state just flips between 0 and 1. And that will keep track, so which one we want to display at each time. So now we are just going to do a quick check. So say if floppy state equal 0, then we want to set floppy state equal 1. Else floppy state equal 0, so floppy state will just oscillator go back and forth between 1 and 0. And then instead of Flappy Bird up, we are going to use birds floppy state. I'm going to replace that each time it pops up. There you go. So now we should find that instead of just having a static bird, we got a bird which oscillate between birds 0 and then birds 1, which are our two texture with the wings up and then wings down. So we should get this animated bird. Alright, so we have got our background and we have got our flopping bird. In the next video, we'll see how to make the bird respond to tap and flop up and down in the way that we saw in the previous video. I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe my channel. If you're not yet, let me know if you have any question, and I'll see you everybody in the next video. Thank you for watching. Take care, peace, and happy coding.